seek to accomplish, we are pretty much done at this point. And the problem for the left is that they set as a goal the idea of zero COVID back last year, and now they can't let go of it. So Biden is kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. On one hand, he wants to declare COVID over so we can all go back to work and everybody can enjoy life and say that he made the thing. On the other hand, he's actually, in order to do that, he has to acknowledge that we have to live with the virus, which would open the can of worms that last year Democrats said we should certainly not live with the virus, and anybody who said we should live with the virus, like Governor DeSantis in Florida, was bad and evil. So instead, we're going to get this ridiculous specter of people trying to scare you into being okay with giving up liberties that really, at this point, there's no scientific rationale for. So you're going to continue masking your kid, even though, again, this thing is not radically damaging to children. I mean, 810 kids died of pneumonia in the same period that COVID killed something like 350 kids over the course of the last year and a half or so. You're supposed to mask up your kid to protect a 40-year-old who decided not to get the vaccine. Or if you're vaccinated, you're supposed to mask up in case, God forbid, you give it to somebody who, again, decided not to get the vaccine. Like that, none of that is high, and the risks from COVID are, depending on your age, maybe somewhat higher, maybe multiple times higher. But again, I respect your ability as an individual to choose as long as you're willing to live with the consequences. If you don't get the vaccine and then you get sick, that would be a you problem. Don't come to public policy seeking a solution.
Right. To that point, though, how in the last year have you figured out who you can trust or what institutions you can trust? Because it seems to me we've just seen a complete collapse across the board, political, cultural, completely collapsed. That's what people ask me almost more than anything else at this point. Dave, who do you trust? How do you figure out how to make some sense of this?
I mean, the way that I determine who to trust is whether people were skeptical of the official narrative, but were basing that in data. So, for example, one of the people who I personally trust, a guy named Dr. Marty McCary from Untitled Chapter, very early on, he and I are talking pretty much every week on the show, and very early on, he was very skeptical of the lockdowns. He was very skeptical of the idea that if you're 20 years old, you shouldn't be working, or that we should be not treating people who are 20 in a different way, or treating people who are 70, for example. Because he was skeptical of that, but he was taking science pretty serious. I have my respect for the same thing with Jay Bhattacharya from Stanford. If you just want to apply the same the actual official narrative throughout, and the idea, and again, I never cited the data, if you ever at any point said, science says, and I have pretty much a problem with it. Science is a process. Science is not a person or an institution. And so there's some people who I think are skeptical of some of the narratives, and who would do a good job. It's the same way you said with trusted politics. They do a good job sort of sealing in their argument and saying, okay, here's where I think the flaws are. They give a nuanced picture of the data, as opposed to people who are just like, you listen to me, and if you don't listen to me, you're an idiot, in which case I think pretty much always you don't listen to those people.
Right. So this will kind of segue us to the book, but are you surprised in the last year? I remember like 2 or 3 weeks into COVID, it was one of the many times in the past year that Ben Shapiro has trended on Twitter because you said the very obvious statement, in essence, that we are going to have to live with a certain amount of debt. A certain amount it's just what actuaries have to deal with when they're figuring out insurance rates, and that's just the reality of life. And of course, everyone in Media Matters and all the usual clowns were saying that Ben Shapiro wants to kill old people and everything else. But related to that, are you sort of surprised how quickly everyone folded? And even now, you can sense that there's a certain amount of people in the media that want lockdowns again. They want more government programs. Like they're getting off on this. They just like it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is very true. I think that this has become almost a pagan worship ceremony for a lot of people. Because, again, I'm not anti-masking under certain circumstances. I'm not anti-masking for unvaccinated people who are with other unvaccinated people who are vulnerable to COVID. I mean, I was never anti-Fauci until he started pretty much overtly lying to us in a wide variety of cases. I've been pro-vaccine throughout this entire pandemic. So, yeah, I find it shocking, however, the number of people who are much more interested in castigating people who are using their own independent risk assessment and coming to a different conclusion, or analyzing the data in a different way, but looking at the data. I'm shocked at the number of people who have decided that they are more interested in the partisan virtue signaling than in even examining the data. That's the part that I find really shocking, and the eagerness with which people are going back to, well, you're not masking. This is where it's going to go, right? They're going to say the CDC will issue some sort of guidance saying if you're vaccinated, you ought to mask up. And I'm going to say no. I've already said no.